Hi, this is Professor Salazar. Today I'm going to be showing you how you can install and configure a broken web application called Damn Vulnerable Web Application. And you can use it to learn about cybersecurity and to learn some of the tactics and techniques that hackers like to use, such as cross-site scripting and SQL injections. So as soon as we get this up and running, we can test it out on some SQL injection and cross-site scripting. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to share my screen. And let me open up my Ubuntu machine. And this is a brand new Ubuntu machine that I just created. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to install updates or check for updates by typing in sudo apt update. There's 133 packages that can be installed or can be upgraded. So I'm going to type in sudo. In 1 second here. Sudo apt upgrade -y. And while this is going, I'm going to talk a little bit about using DVWA. What we're going to need is we're going to first have to install a few prerequisites. The first prerequisite being UFW, which is our firewall. We're going to have to install our firewall and make sure that we have the proper ports open for connecting to a database and connecting to a website. So we're going to be connecting to a database through port 3306, which is MySQL. And we're going to be connecting through a port to connect to our website, which is port 80. Okay, so 3306 and 80 are the two ports that we're going to be working with. I'll also install net-tools so I can check my IP address. And I'll also install a tool called MariaDB-server, which is similar to MySQL and all the commands. And I'll also install PHP, which is the programming language of the website that we're going to create. And then a few other plugins that we may need. After that, I'll also be securing our database. And I'll also be creating a database and creating a user for that database and allowing them access by granting all privileges to the database. So I'm just waiting for my upgrades to finish. And the next step is to install all of the prerequisites that I'm going to need. So I'm going to type in sudo. Actually, the first one is going to be net-tools. So I'm going to type in sudo apt install net-tools. And this is going to allow me just to do ifconfig. I could check my IP address and I see it right here, 172.21.219.132. I'm also going to be checking the firewall. And if I just do sudo UFW status, it shows me that it's active, which is good. I can also check to see if there's any open ports. And right now there's no open ports, even though it's active. But what I can do is I could type in sudo UFW allow 80, for example, and that'll open up port 80. I also need port 3306 open so that I can use it for my MySQL connections. So I'm going to type in sudo UFW allow 3306. And if I do sudo UFW status, I see those two ports that I just opened. Okay. The next step is just to install all of the required packages. So I'm going to type in sudo apt install Apache 2 space MariaDB-server space PHP space PHP-MySQL-I space PHP-GD space lib apache 2 -mod -php. Okay, I know this is long, so I'm going to wait a second. If anyone is taking notes and trying to copy all of this into your terminals. From here, all I'm going to do is just type in enter. And it's asking me, do you want to continue? So I'm typing a Y to continue. And then the next step after this finishes is I'm going to prepare the database, and I'm going to start by securing MariaDB. Okay, so after that's complete, I'm going to secure it by typing in sudo mysql_secure_installation. And it's just going to run through some security checks here. So it's asking me to enter the current password for root. And right now, since I have none, I'm just going to hit enter. It's asking me if I want to switch to a Unix socket authentication. And it says if you already have your root account protected, you can safely answer no here. I'm going to type a no right here. I'm going to go ahead and change my root password. So I'm going to type Y, and it's asking me for a new password for root. It's asking me to re-enter it. It's asking me if I want to remove anonymous users. I'm going to type Y. In reality, I'm only going to have one user connect to my MariaDB. And if there's any emergency or if there's something that I have to do with elevated privileges, then I'll also use my root account. So it's really just going to be 2 users that I have that are going to be using MariaDB. I'm going to disallow remote login. So I'm going to type in root login remotely. So I'm going to type a Y. And then I'm going to remove the test database and access to it by typing Y. This actually protects your database as far as the attack surface goes. If you can remove as much as you can as far as having access to the database as much as possible, that's what you would call protecting the attack surface. I'm going to reload privilege tables now by typing Y. And it says, thank you for using MariaDB. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to MariaDB with my root account. So I'm going to type in sudo -u for the username. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me type in sudo MariaDB space -u for the root username. And I'm going to type in root space -p. And the space -p is going to require me to type in a password for my root account. It says enter the password. And this is the password that I just created. And now I'm into MariaDB. And here what I can do is I can type in a command like show databases, semicolon. And you'll notice that databases is in all caps, right? If I type that in, it actually shows me what databases are in MariaDB right now. And there's only 4 of them. And these are system databases. These are not user databases that have been created. Okay, so let's say, for example, I want to create a database. I could type in the command let me go back. I could type in the command to create a database. Give me 1 second here. Create database. And I'm going to call this DVWA in all lowercase, followed by a semicolon. So create database DVWA will create a database called DVWA. And it shows me query OK, 1 row affected. So now I actually have a database called DVWA. How do I know that database exists? Well, if I type in that command, show databases, it actually shows it to me right there. It's the first one under database. Okay. So the next step is to create a user account that's going to actually use the database. So I'm going to type in create user, and user has to be in all caps, followed by the space bar, followed by a single quote, DVWA, close single quote, @ open single quote, localhost, close single quote, space bar, identified by, in all caps, space, single quote, my password that I want to set up for my DVWA user account. And I'm just putting password like capital P, lowercase a, $, W0RD. It's enclosed in single quotes, and at the end of this entire statement, there's a semicolon. And this is going to create my user account called DVWA with a password of password. Okay. Next step is to give my DVWA user account all privileges to the database. So I'm going to type in create, or I'm sorry, not create, grant all privileges. I think I misspelled privileges. Let me try it again. Grant all privileges on DVWA dot asterisk space 2 in caps space open single quote DVWA close single quote @ open single quote localhost close single quote space identified by space open single quote password, and then a semicolon at the end. And you'll notice that password is encapsulated in single quotes as well. These are really important when you're writing these MySQL commands. You'll notice that grant all privileges on is in all caps. You'll notice that identified by is in all caps. You'll notice that the word to is in all caps. All right. So I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to grant all privileges to my DVWA user account for this database with this password. Okay. And then after I'm done, I'm just going to exit out. Okay. Okay. So the next step is to install the application. But before I install DAM Vulnerable Web Application, I want to make sure that my website is up and running, which is Apache. And here it is. I opened up my browser and I went to my Ubuntu's IP address, and it opened up this Apache 2 default web page. All right. So since I know it's there, all I need to do is install the application to make this thing work. And there's a little bit of configuration afterward. So after I exited out of the database, I'm going to change directory to a directory where my website lies. And that's a directory called /var/www/html. I'm going to minimize my browser. And while I'm in this directory, I can also do ls and actually see that there's an index.html file right here. That index.html file is actually this website right here that was just given to me when I installed Apache. Okay, next step is to use the github.com website to clone a Git repository and download the DAM Vulnerable Web Application. So I'm going to type in sudo git clone https://github.com/digininja /DVWA dot git. All right, and I think I misspelled DigiNinja, so let me go back. DIGININGA. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit enter here, and it's going to download that repository to my web server. It's cloning it. It is asking me for a username, which this is not common. It should not ask me for a username. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to pause this video just real quick and see if I could type in a username for my GitHub account and see if it works. If not, I may have to actually go out somewhere else on the web to see if I can download this. Let's see if I can pause. Okay, I think I might know what was going on here. And it looks like I may have misspelled DigiNinja. So if you notice here, there should be a J instead of a G. Let's see if I can download this. And there you go. I just downloaded the DVWA application to my web server, and that's under /var/www/html. If I do ls, I'll see a folder called DVWA. And what I can do is I can change directory into DVWA. And if I do ls, I see a lot of files and folders that are there. So I know that the application is there now. Okay. What I was trying to do earlier was try to download it, and it wouldn't let me download it. And it just looked like I had misspelled the GitHub repository. Okay, so now that I have that working, the next step is to give ownership to the web server and everything within it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in cd ... to go back up one directory. And I'm going to type in sudo chown space -R space www-data www-data space /var/www/html/**. I'll go ahead and make this a little bigger so y'all could see it. And then after I provided the ownership to it, now I can make changes to the configuration file. And the configuration file is actually in that DVWA folder. So if I type in cd DVWA and type in ls, I'll see a configuration file in here. And this one is called config.inc.php.dist. And this one's under the config folder. So I'm going to type in cd space config. And if I do ls, I'll see that config.inc.php.dist. So I'm going to go back to my original location and just make a copy of this file and rename it. And I'm going to leave it in the same location. But the reason I'm changing directory up to my original location is because I want to stay within my web server. And my web server is in /var/www/html. So this is why I'm going up two directories right here by using cd to change directory space .. That's going to take me up two directories. And now I'm in /var/www/html. So I'm going to make a copy of the configuration file. And I'm going to type in cp for copy /var/www/html/config/config.inc.php.dist space /var/www/html/ oh, I forgot something here. Let me go back. After HTML, there was a /DVWA. And right here after HTML, there's /DVWA/config/config.inc.php. So the only difference here is that there's no dist at the end right here. I'm making a copy of this file called config.inc.php.dist, and I'm changing the name of it to config.inc.php without the .dist at the end. Okay. And it says it can't create it because it's permission denied. So this is really easy to fix. All I have to do is just type in sudo in the front. And now it made a copy of that configuration file. So what I'm going to do next is open the configuration file and make some changes on it. So I'm going to type in sudo nano /var/www/html/config/config.inc.php and hit enter. And here's the configuration file for MariaDB. And I'm going to go down here to the password because it looks like the password is not set up correctly for the DVWA user account. I had set up password like capital P, lowercase a, $$ W0RD. And I don't like seeing this get event or get environment DB server ? So I'm going to get rid of that. I know there may be times when you need that, but for my example, I'm just not going to need it right there. I'm going to take that off. And I'm just going to scroll down and just look at all of the settings. Everything looks correct. The only two changes I made were under DB server. I made sure that it pointed to my IP address. And right here, it's just pointing back to its original location or the home. This is what you would call a loopback address, 127.0.0.1. And I changed the password of my DVWA user account to password. It's still using port 3306. And the database is also called DVWA. So here I'm going to exit out of Nano and save my changes. So I'm going to type in Control X, Y, and enter. Okay. And the next step is to, before I actually open up my browser and browse to that location, I want to restart my Apache service. And the only reason I'm restarting my Apache service is because I made a lot of changes to how Apache is actually running now. So I'm going to type in sudo systemctl restart Apache 2. And 9 times out of 10, you don't need to restart the service. But just like I said, there may be times when you just want to restart it just to be on the safe side, make sure that everything's working properly. Okay, so it just restarted. And I'm going to go back to my server. And I'm going to reload my page. Nothing happens. But at the end of my IP address, I'm going to type in /DVWA and hit enter. And now my broken web application is installed. Okay. So the username is going to be admin, all lowercase, and the password is going to be password, all lowercase. And when I log into it, this is what it looks like. Okay, so it's asking me for database setup. There's some red things that came up. There's a CAPTCHA that's missing. The status in red shows that I need to fix some things in my Apache settings, but I'm just going to go ahead and click create/reset database down at the bottom. Okay. So now the database has been reset. And now I'm going to log back into DVWA with the username admin and password, all lowercase. Now I'm logged into the broken web application. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to give you an example of an SQL injection and also cross-site scripting. Okay, so over here under, let me make this bigger so y'all could see this. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more here. Over on the left-hand side, I'm going to scroll down to DVWA security. And by the way, the security right now is really high, and it's the level that's set to impossible. So when you have the level set to impossible, it's really impossible to break this thing. Like, it's really impossible for somebody to break into this broken web application. But what you can do as far as just testing the web application and checking for vulnerabilities and whatnot, you can lower the security level. And right here, I'm just going to lower it down to low and submit. The security level has now been set to low. And I'm going to go over to SQL injection. And here is a text box that's asking me to enter a user ID. Now, watch how easy this is to find your way into this database that's running on this broken web application. All I have to do is type in a user ID. And chances are the first one is 1. So if I click 1 and submit, it shows me that the first name is admin and the surname is admin. If I type in a number 2, it shows me that the first name is Gordon and the last name is Brown. If I type in number 3, it shows me the first name is Hack and the last name is me. And I could just keep on going here. There's no security on this thing right now, or should I say the security is really low to the point where I could just type in anything into this text box and it's going to show me information that I want to see. This is not secure, right? I type in 4 and it shows me Pablo Picasso. I type in number 5 and it shows me Bob Smith. And I could just keep on going on and just see different names come up, right? But another thing that you can do is if you have a database that's insecure or some type of web application that's binded to a database, you can essentially perform an SQL injection attack and be able to see more information than what you can just see, right? So if I want to take a look at a lot more users than just type in 1 by 1, every single user ID, I can also type in this SQL injection attack that looks like this: single quote, space, or space 1 equals 1, semicolon, space, dash, dash, space bar. Don't forget the space bar at the end. And when I hit submit, it actually shows me all of the users that are in that table inside that database called DVWA. Okay, so that's how you would perform an SQL injection attack. They're not actually user IDs that you would type in. They're not exactly passwords, but they're kind of this strange looking text where it's actually performing an SQL query and asking the database, hey, show me everything that's in the database. And if you can't show it to me because I'm not logged in correctly, you know, or 1 equals 1, meaning, or if that's true, if my username and password are not correct, or if I'm not typing in something right, then 1 equals 1 is always going to be true. Therefore, show me everything. All right. And the way the database actually reads it is, well, you know, I might not be able to show you everything because you didn't log in correctly, but 1 always equals 1. And if that's true, then I'll show you everything. And that's kind of what this SQL injection attack looks like. So let me show you something else that you can do. And before I move forward, I want to elaborate a little bit more on what's actually happening with this SQL injection attack. So I'm going to open up Notepad. And this is something that I did for my last video. So I'm going to click on the plus sign. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit farther in so you can see this. Actually, let me see if I can change the font to something higher than 11. Maybe 22 is fine. Okay, so when I'm typing an SQL injection attack that looks like this, single quote or 1 = 1, semicolon, space, dash, dash, space, and don't forget there's a space bar at the end. This is what an SQL query actually looks like when I'm asking the user for information. It looks something like this in the back end. Select first name, comma, surname from, from space users where ID equals something or 1 = 1, semicolon, space, dash, dash, space. Close a single quote and close another semicolon. So the bottom one on line 2 is an example of what an SQL query looks like. It's a select statement asking the database to show you information. And in this case, I'm asking to show the first name and the last name from this table called users, where the ID equals, I don't know what it equals, or 1 = 1. Therefore, since it doesn't know what ID to use, 1 is always going to equal 1, so it's going to show you everything within that table. And that's kind of how this SQL injection works. In reality, a web application should never allow somebody to type in this SQL injection in order to view information. If a web application or some website that's out there online requires you to plug in a user ID, then it should only allow you to type in a number, not some type of SQL injection like this. Okay, this could easily be fixed if you're a developer of the SQL server, or if you're some type of a database administrator, and when you develop the information that belongs in those tables, or you're designing the database itself, you're thinking about input validation, making sure that the user is only allowed to type in a certain characters, or in this case, numbers. Since user IDs are always going to be numbers, this text box should only allow the user to type in a number, not an equal sign, not a semicolon, not the word or, not a single quote, not space bars, and not dashes. So this is why this SQL injection works, is because whoever created this broken web application wasn't thinking about security in mind, wasn't thinking about security to begin with. And if they were thinking about security to begin with, they would have recognized that each of our text boxes that users are using or customers are using should have input validation and only allow the user to type in numbers when you're asking the user to type in a user ID. Okay. All right. So I gave an example of an SQL injection attack right here. And I gave you an example of an SQL query using a select statement right here. Okay, so I'll go ahead and close that out. And the next one that I wanted you all to see is something called a cross-site scripting attack. And I'm going to click on XSS for cross-site scripting. And cross-site scripting is a type of vulnerability that allows for the execution of JavaScript or some other code for cookie stealing. All right. This is what you would call information scraping. And in extreme cases, hackers can use cross-site scripting to download malware to your machine without any action from the user or without any action by the user. So when you're asking the user for a name, instead of the user actually typing in the name of a user, an attacker can type in a script in here into this text box. And the next time somebody uses this, it's going to display to them something that it should not display. All right, this is what you would call a cross-site scripting attack. So for example, one way of testing to see if your web application is vulnerable to cross-site scripting is by typing, if it asks you for your name, type in any name. I'm just going to type in the name John. And when I click on submit, you'll notice that this is vulnerable to cross-site scripting because all it's doing is it's taking your name and applying it to this sentence called hello John. I could have changed it to hello Salazar. And when I click on submit, it changes the name to hello Salazar. This is reflective cross-site scripting. And this is vulnerable to attack. Okay, so you're leaving your web application vulnerable to attack just by reflecting input. Okay, so what you want to do here in order to fix this, or before we actually fix it, let's go a step further and let's see some types of cross-site scripting that can be done here. If this is reflective cross-site scripting, I can type in a script like this, /script, or not /script, sorry, in carets script alert open parentheses document dot cookie close parentheses semicolon open caret /script close caret. I call them carets, but in reality they're called something else. All right. Once I click on submit here, it's actually going to do something on the website. And this is how you know that this web application is vulnerable to cross-site scripting. So watch what happens here when I click submit. The page redirects me to something that says 172.21.219.132 says some type of a token or key, and it shows me that the security is low. So if an attacker performs this cross-site scripting, they can check the security of your web application. They can see what it's set to. And they can also display the token that's being used for this session. Okay? Because they're actually grabbing the cookie for this session. Okay, that's an example of cross-site scripting. And there's other things that you can do here that are a little bit more dangerous for the user. Like, for example, I can have the user click on something, like instead of displaying hello Salazar or hello John, I can actually have it display a link. And when the user clicks on that link, it'll redirect them somewhere else and it'll display something else. So I'll give you an example of this. I can type in something like this. Open caret A space href, which stands for active link. The A stands for an active link. Href stands for hyperlink reference. Equals, in double quotes, job space 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 script colon alert open parentheses single quote you're currently being monitored by your webcam. This is not actually true, but I can trick the user into thinking that their webcam is on and is actually recording them right now. Okay. And I'm going to close a single quote. I'm going to close a parentheses. type in a semicolon, followed by a closed double quote, followed by a closed caret, and type in the word click me, followed by an open caret /A close caret. I just thought of the word, instead of carets, it's actually tags. So I have an active link tag that was open way over here with the tag A, and a closed active link tag right here with the /A. So let me go ahead and hit submit, and you'll see that now it says, hello, click me. And when I click me, let's see what happens. Oh, nothing actually happens. So it looks like I didn't actually type that in correctly. Let me try it again. Tag A space href equals double quote Java space script colon alert open parentheses single quote your webcam is currently recording you, close single quote, close parentheses, semicolon, close double quote, close caret, or not caret, close tag, click me, open tag /A close tag. Now let's see if this works. I'm going to click on submit. The browser just refreshed. This is a new click me. So if I click me, it still didn't work. So there must have been something that I didn't do correctly on that end. But I can always try this again without actually typing in the space or the tab in between JavaScript. So let me go ahead and leave that JavaScript alert the way it should be. And let me click on submit again. There's a new click me button. And if I click it, it says your webcam is currently recording you. So I actually displayed a message to whoever is actually going to use this website and show them something that's not actually true to the user's end. This is not just me using it, but let's say, for example, this is a real world web application where security wasn't thought of in the beginning. Whoever developed this web application left themselves vulnerable to cross-site scripting and allowed an attacker to type in some script into this text box. Well, the next person that uses the text box runs whatever's on that screen and shows them a message like this, right? It looks kind of creepy because you wouldn't necessarily think that your webcam is on, but it's one way of tricking the user, of manipulating them and having them think that, you know what, maybe my webcam is on and maybe somebody's actually recording me. There are ways of penetrating into a system and turning on your webcam remotely. Okay, there are ways of creating a backdoor on a computer and being able to access your entire computer and turning on and turning off processes like your webcam, like your microphone, like shutting your system down, or like stealing files and folders. If I were to set up a backdoor on your system, I can do that with a tool called Metasploit. And if your system has not been up to date or is missing some security updates, then I can use Metasploit and exploit some of your vulnerabilities where it will allow me to log into your system, turn on your webcam, turn on your microphone, take over your computer, steal files and folders, really do some damage on your computer without you even knowing about it. So this is something that you want to be aware of. And this is why you always want to be up to date with your updates. If you see that your computer is requiring you to download an update, don't wait till later, because later may never come. Later may come and you totally forget about this update. All right. And the longer you wait, the more you make your system vulnerable to attack. So if you ever see that your system needs updates, don't say that you're too busy, just do the update. All right. Your firewall. If you don't have a firewall, make sure that you install a firewall. If you have a firewall, it's in an active state. Make sure that you activate it and make sure that you know what ports are open and which ones are closed. And also, if you don't have any type of antivirus software, download and install an antivirus software. Go out and do your homework. Make sure you do your research and find a really good antivirus program. I know with the new Windows 11 update, there's been some really big changes to the Windows Defender that's running on your computer, and it's really useful to protecting your computer and minimizing that attack surface that I talked about earlier. And when you run a tool like Defender on your computer, you're thinking about security first. And you should always think that way. Whatever you're running on your computer, you should want to protect it as much as you can. Okay. All right. It looks like it's not actually doing anything here, but I'm going to go ahead and go back in there. And I'm going to close out of this. And this is how you can install the damn vulnerable web application. It's a broken web application. You can use any browser to get into it. And you can kind of play around with some tools that it has in there and some type of hacking techniques like SQL injections and cross-site scripting. I also saw that there's a place to test out for cross-site request forgery. And you can also test and see what other web pages are available in there. So for example, if an attacker found that you have a broken web application running on your system, they might want to run a tool like GoBuster. And GoBuster is a tool that you can use to find out what pages are on your web server and to find hidden web pages that people should not usually be able to connect to. With GoBuster, you can also perform directory traversal. And if you don't have access to a specific page, you can traverse a directory and gain access to another page by using GoBuster and viewing those pages. So that's all I wanted to share with you all today. If you have any questions, please send me an email. And I thank you for your time.